As it appears Ben Roethlisberger will make his way onto the field in Baltimore against the Ravens on Sunday. Both teams coming off byes, and that meant that all of us got to sit around on Sunday and watch football for a weekend and certainly get out of bed early in jolly old London and watch the Bengals do business with the Redskins. It is a rare Sunday indeed that I root for the Washington Redskins, but don't tell Marvin Lewis, but this guy deals with Marvin out there in Cincinnati and all things Reds and Bengals and Bearcats. He's been a sports columnist since 1994 at the Cincinnati Enquirer. Every time I bring him on the program, I mispronounce his name. So, it is Paul Doherty. But Paul, here's the problem, man. I went to school with a Mike Doherty who spelled it the same way. And I don't know, it's some Irish, Scottish thing going on. It's great to have you back on, Doc. How's life in the Queen City, man?
I'm recovering from a little jet lag, but other than that, we're doing good.
How'd London go? I had a couple of beer buddies of mine who, and I don't talk about this much publicly, Paul, but they're Redskins fans, and they were over in London, and my buddy texts me, and he's been to 20 Super Bowls and been around the world at rock concerts and various sporting events and soccer events. He said it felt like a big deal to him. He said they did a nice job. He enjoyed himself.
Yeah, the NFL does a wonderful job with this. The place was full. You could tell who were Redskin fans, who were Bengals fans. They were all into it. As normally the way things go with the NFL, it ran like clockwork. It was terrific. I mean, if you're a big fan of this international series, which I'm not necessarily a big fan of it, but it was perfect. It really was, and I think both fan bases certainly got their money's worth.
Dude, you've done this a long time. You've covered a couple World Cups or Olympics or that sort of thing?
I covered 5 Summer Olympics.
So you've been all over the world and seen these big events. I mean, you get on a plane to fly over to London. What are you expecting when you go over for that?
I had no expectations, to tell you the truth, other than I was, I hoped to have some free time to go see a couple of the famous sites, and I was able to do that. I will tell you this, having been to the Olympics in Sydney and Barcelona and Seoul and Athens, and obviously been to all the cities in this country, London is one huge place, man. That's what really surprised me. It makes New York look like a small town, honest to God. There's so much. It's so dense, whether it's the building or the traffic or the pedestrians. I've never been to another city like it. I didn't go to Rio, so maybe Rio was similar, but London is, to say it's bustling is kind of an understatement.
Yeah, I've been to Beijing. I've been to Sao Paulo. I've been to Buenos Aires. Some really complicated places. When you fly out of Sao Paulo and you look down, it looks like 200 Manhattans, you know what I mean? And you see Manhattan out of a plane. Manhattan, it's dense and it's thick and it's New York and it's a big deal, but it doesn't go on for 50 miles, It right. Sort of ends at the park, kind of, sort of, you know? For you in this London trip and what it means to the Bengals and where they are, obviously, we're here shoveling a little dirt on Marvin, right, and on the Bengals and saying maybe they're not going to be a factor. I know one thing, nobody's running away and hiding in this division. Now, Pittsburgh has an opportunity to do that this week, but what's gone wrong for the Bengals? And maybe some of this could be predictive, right, for the Ravens taking on all the 30-plus club guys and Marvin having as big a core of guys as I've seen in the modern era of football, where I look down on the Bengals depth chart and it looks really, really similar to the way it did 5 years ago.
They're underachieving, no question about it. They'll tell you that. They'll admit that freely. The big problem has been on both sides of both lines. The offensive line has not been good, and they like to say it's because they haven't been together. But the only guy who didn't come back from last year was a right tackle, Cedric Ogbuehi, and he's having his problems. He's basically a rookie. He's a second-year guy, but he's kind of a rookie in terms of playing time. But the offensive line has not been great. The defensive line has not been great. They're not getting a lot of pressure on quarterbacks, and because of that, the secondary, which is still pretty good, is suffering a little bit. If they can't get the pressure, the guys got all day, and that's essentially what happened a lot of the time with Kirk Cousins. Nobody accuses Kirk Cousins of being an elite quarterback, and he threw for like 460 yards the other day. So they got problems on both sides of the line, and things just, for whatever reason, haven't clicked. It's not that this team has any chemistry issues, I don't think. I think they get along well with each other. I think this, and it's just a speculation on my part, that if you have the same coach for as long as they've had, and you have basically the core guys that you've had from the last 5 years when you lost the first playoff game every year, there's something to be said, maybe just for shaking things up, new ideas, new blood, new ways of doing things, and they haven't really done that. And I said before the season that this was either going to be the year that they won a playoff game or two and maybe even got to the Super Bowl, or a year that they were going to go 8-8. And right now it looks like 8-8. It's just maybe just a case of a little staleness setting in, you know?
Well, the Redskins thing was particularly ugly, right? Because they had the game all but lost on more than one occasion, quite frankly, and still wound up getting a tie, which feels like a loss. And their losses are much more representative. I mean, Pittsburgh, Denver, Dallas, New England, what do they all have in common? They're all going to be playing in January, it looks, at this point. So they've had loss. I mean, we've lost to the Jets, man. You know what I mean? We lost to the Redskins. So, it's been really ugly, but it's also been about a bunch of injuries here. With Cincinnati, I think it's been about a bunch of departures, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, teams lose guys to free agency every year. Teams lose assistant coaches. I don't think they use that as a reason. I think it's an excuse. They have a core of players that is as good as any team's core in the league, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know there are a whole lot of teams that would not want Andy Dalton, A.J. Green, Giovanni Bernard, or Tyler Eifert, right?
Sure.
And on the other side, I don't know there are a lot of teams that wouldn't take Burfict, Dunlap, possibly Pac-Man Jones, who hasn't had a great year this year, but he's a really good player. So they've got some really good pieces, and those pieces are the same as last year. For them to say that we're suffering a little because of people we lost, I don't know. They replaced Hugh Jackson with Ken Zampese. Ken Zampese's been here like 11, 12 years. He developed Carson Palmer. It's not as if they're starting over anew. It's anything but. They've had some turnover, but everybody has turnover.
So what's going to make them play better at this point? I mean, the pass rush is something that everything in Baltimore is about, well, we'll get Yonda back, we'll get Stanley back, we'll get Mosley back, we'll get Suggs back in a sling, and, Steve Smith will run around and catch him. And that's how, if you're a Ravens fan, I don't know that any of the second-string guys have played up to the level in the last 4 weeks that you think they're going to go into Foxborough and win in December, which is something the Ravens still have to do. I mean, we start to look down at the schedule and say, all right, who do we have and who do they have? No one's got a tougher schedule than the Ravens. I mean, they still got to go to Dallas. They got Philadelphia coming in. It's an ugly second half if you're counting on what teams did in the first half.
Well, and the Bengals don't have that issue. Like you said, they played 4 teams that are really pretty good. The problem with that is that they lost to those 4 teams by an average of 13 points. And the only 3 teams that they beat are 3 of the worst in the league, the Jets, Miami, and the Browns. So they got an easier schedule in the second half, but you got to wonder if they can make good use of that. They do have everybody back now. I mean, Eifert being back, if you saw the game on Sunday, he makes a huge difference in what they do. Not only does he free up A.J. Green a little bit, he's a great seam guy. He's the guy you go to in the red zone down the middle. He did that the other day. He's just a really good player, and they've got him back. And they've got everybody healthy. I mean, there's nobody here now who's not healthy. So they're healthy. They have an easier schedule. The problem is they haven't shown that they can beat anybody that's any good.
Paul Daugherty has been covering sports a long time, since 1994 at the Cincinnati Enquirer. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Enquirer, Doc. That's Enquirer with an E. He also writes books along with Chad Johnson and Ocho Cinco and Johnny Bench, as well as An Uncomplicated Life, which is a wonderful piece, and you can go check that out at Enquirer, Doc. He's down in Cincinnati, Ohio, where they also play some baseball. Hey, man, I saw that Leyritz piece that you wrote. And, give me a little background on that, because I vaguely remember the car crash that you speak of. I absolutely remember and refer oft times to the home run. I mean, I was at that World Series game, and obviously I've been watching the World Series all week, and it sort of conjures up some memories of, great sporting events I've seen and things. I mean, I was in Toronto the night Joe Carter hit the home run. That was kind of neat and very memorable. But that Leyritz home run really set off an era of Yankee baseball, I think.
Yeah, Jim Larritz is a Cincinnati guy. He went to high school here. He went to college at the University of Kentucky right down the road. 96, he hit a home run off Mark Wohlers in Game 4. The Yankees were down 2-1, and they were down in that game 6-0. Then they got back to 6-3, and when Larritz came up in the 8th, it was 6-3, hit a 3-run homer, tied the game. The Yankees ended up winning that game and winning the World Series, and then they won 3 of the next 4 World Series. So Larritz gets a little bit of credit for kind of kick-starting that miniature dynasty the Yankees had, and he's still very well known and liked in the New York area for that reason. And but the downside, obviously, 11 years after that, he was drunk and ran into a woman in an intersection and killed her. She was in the car as well, and they hit her car, broadside her car, and she was not wearing a seatbelt, and she was ejected from the car and died. And he went to trial for vehicular manslaughter, and it took the jury just 30 minutes to acquit him. He was found not guilty. The woman had also been drinking. She was also over the limit. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and there was no conclusive proof that Larritz either ran a stoplight or was speeding. So he was convicted of the DUI and got a year's probation, but was acquitted of obviously the bigger charge. So 20 years later, which is now, I just wanted to ask him what it's like to have a life that has such drama and trauma in equal measure. I mean, he's seen the highs and the highs of the highs, the lows of the lows, obviously, and he was very good about it. And you can read it on Cincinnati.com, basically saying, I'm guilty of DUI. I was not guilty of killing this woman, which technically is true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I was a little bit surprised over his lack of guilt about the whole thing, but 20 years later, or at least what is it now, 9 years after the accident, if you don't move on, you die. I think if you dwell on it, you're consumed by guilt. You don't have much of a life. He works now for charities. He's a spokesman for a couple of national charities. He attends lots of events, promotes the charities. So I guess his life has turned out as well as it could. But that, like I said, man, that's why I wanted to ask him. You've had a life unlike most of ours, and how's it going? Especially because he's a Cincinnati guy, and he is exactly 20 years removed from one of the biggest home runs in World Series history.
Well, he's obviously out telling his story too, right? I mean, and trying to help people, and I guess all we could expect of anyone as we get older, right? Pitch in a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, I that's kind of the angle I took on it. I gotten a lot of mail off it, basically saying, dude, what's your problem? The guy killed somebody. So, yes.
So what's he going to do? Go live in a hole, right? I mean,
I
don't know.
That's kind of my point. It's terrible, obviously, and he gets to live, and she does not. I think people wanted him to express a little more remorse, and he does. And I quoted him, but he's gone on to live his life and do the best with it that he can. And like I said, he does a lot of charity work. That's part of what he does for a living. So I don't know. Just I
it's a story, and you write stories. I mean, that's a great story.
I just asked people this morning. I said, read it and tell me what you think. I didn't really pass judgment on it one way or the other. I just kind of wrote what happened.
Paul Doherty joining us here from Cincinnati, Ohio, where the Bengals have the week off. You think any ill effects from this trip? I mean, did any of the players get to have a little fun, or facilities? We haven't never played in the game, and we're coming closer and closer. I mean, our number is going to get called, right, to go to London and play. We play at Jacksonville next year, at Tennessee. Some of these soft spots where the teams give their home games away, right? I mean, the Rams are, it's part of their deal, right, at this point. So we're going to wind up over there. I'm just wondering, and I know the Ravens are trying to avoid it like the plague. I mean, no one wants to play that game, right?
Right. Well, these guys, I mean, they weren't enthusiastic about it, but some of them did take advantage of it. I don't find athletes to be terrifically curious about anything that doesn't involve them, generally, but, I mean, there were some guys. I mean, Giovanni Bernard, went to Buckingham Palace, and a couple other guys were at the Tower of London, and so, yeah, there were a few. The funny thing is, you ask them, are you going to go to Abbey Road? And they have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, Abbey, what's Abbey Road?
I know.
Where the Beatles walked. And, no, I don't think we're going to go there. Never heard of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think they suffered any ill effects. Both teams come in there tired, so there's no real advantage to that, I don't think. And now they get the bye week, so I think it'll be fine.
All right, we got a second half ahead. It's been fun watching your guy Pete Rose. I don't know. It's almost sort of like Saturday Night Live-y, sort of, kind of. I mean, one thing that has emerged, A-Rod's really good at doing this, right? I mean, that's sort of universal, right?
Doing what?
Doing the pregame Fox stuff. I mean,
oh, you know what? I'd love to help you out with that. I have not seen Pete other than the bow tie. I've not seen Pete or heard Pete do any of that stuff.
It's a show. Well, Google it, man. It's pretty good, Doc. I'll be honest with you. Okay. Pete's not. Pete's very awkward, but over the last month, they've, I think, developed some sort of bromance. Like they're picking on each other now, like big time. So it's become, it's become a little bit more like Barkley on the TNT pregame, where it's become a little bit more like fun, kidding each other. But yeah, I mean, A-Rod's really, really good at doing television. It's fascinating.
Good for him. I think maybe Pete is more than maybe not quite kidding. I think Pete's still a little bit resentful that A-Rod can be eligible for the Hall of Fame.
We're going to go down that road. I know.
Well, I'm just trying to read Pete's mind on that.
Isn't there a point where Pete just admits to everyone he's made millions and millions more dollars by not being in the Hall of Fame than he ever would have made had they voted him in 20 years ago, right?
I don't know that anybody can say that. You're saying that because he's not in the Hall of Fame, the notoriety makes his autograph worth more?
I think everything about him is worth more than Mike Schmidt because he's been good at selling, not being the guy not in. I mean, I see he pops up everywhere. I was in Vegas 2 weeks ago chasing the Stones concert that never happened. I walk into one of the autograph shops, the gigantic monument to Pete Rose there. This is where he sits to sign the autographs. There's pictures there. He's appearing next month. Pete's everywhere, man. Pete's eternal.
I mean, that's what he does for a living. And if he weren't banned from baseball, he might actually have a job in baseball, and maybe you're right, he wouldn't have the opportunities that he has now in terms of signing his name. But I mean, he lives in Vegas, and he has a permanent place to sign autographs, and that's how he makes money.
I just think he's had a much better gig not being in the Hall of Fame than he ever would have been if he just went in and would have been a garden variety Hall of Famer with 4,200 hits. I mean, I'm not even being flippant, Doc. I mean, I'm just being serious. I think
you may be right.
He's been way more infamous for not being in than if they just would have let him in 1992. At that point, he just would have been another guy, I think, right?
I don't know. I guess we'll never know that.
Well, it's the best points to argue, right, where there's no right answer, right? Hey, man, it's great having you on. Be well down there. We'll see you. Save me some chili dogs right around New Year's Eve. I'll see you then.
Sounds good.
You got it. Paul Daugherty, one of the great writers in America, writing about more than just toys in the toy department, an uncomplicated life. Google it. Check it out. Daugherty, that's Daugherty. But you can find him out on Twitter at Inquirer Doc. That's with an E in Cincinnati, as Earl Weaver would call it. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We come in crystal clear. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. every morning. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. Some point the Orioles are going to hire a pitching coach. You're going to find out first there. And the Ravens injury reports, the infirmary all week long, hoping for good news as we welcome, I don't really mean that, the Pittsburgh Steelers to town on Sunday. We're welcoming the guy who saved my wife's life to town this week. It's going to be fun. If you're following along on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, we'll be putting some pictures and some fun up. As Niels comes to town, we're throwing a party for him on November the 12th. It is his birthday. It's at Pier 5, Roos Chris, the new, improved, larger space. It's going to be fun. We're going to have some chocolate mousse, some cake, some drinks at affordable prices, and some happy hour menu stuff too. So come on down. It's from 6 until midnight. It's November the 12th. Throw us an email. nasty@WNST.net finds me. All right. We'll step out. We'll take a break. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.